When I kicked in that hospital door, I wasn't the soldier anymore. I was a father looking at my daughter bleeding under police guard. Her face stitched, her hand twitching. 9 names whispered in her half-conscious breath, all local boys. But what made me freeze cold wasn't her wounds. It was the 2 cops outside laughing, deleting the report before I even spoke a word. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. They say once you've lived in the dark long enough, your eyes adjust. But nothing in my years of Black Ops training prepared me for that sterile white room or the smell of lost innocence. The heart monitor ticked like a grenade timer. My daughter, Ivy, 20 years old, all ribs and heartbreak, lying there like the world had folded on her. The nurse whispered, "She's been asking for you, sir." I didn't answer. I just stared at the dried blood under her fingernails, the kind you only see when someone fights back. Her pulse jumped when she sensed me there. "Dad," she barely breathed. "They said you'd never find out." My throat went dry. "Who, Ivy?" She tried to talk, but her voice cracked under tubes and trauma. The words came out broken. 9 of them laughed while they did it. I squeezed her hand and felt that old urge rise, the one I buried years ago after the missions went classified. Rage. But beneath that, guilt. I had traded birthdays for battlefields. A detective stepped in, flipping his notebook like he'd just spilled coffee, uninterested, mechanical. "Mr. Mason, we're logging this as a multi-party altercation." She was seen near a known hangout spot. Could have been mutual aggression. I looked at him slowly, trained eyes locking on his badge number. There was no body cam. No paperwork on the desk corner. "You take me for an idiot?" He didn't blink. "Listen, we've got priorities. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Ivy coughed, trying to lift her head. "He said the police already know." Then her monitor beeped wild. She seized, just for a second, before the nurse rushed in. I was frozen in place, hearing every tick like distant gunfire. Outside that room, 2 officers stood whispering in the corner. I caught one phrase, just one. "File's already gone." Captain said wipe everything. Crazy vet doesn't need details clogging his grief. Crazy vet. They didn't know who I used to be. I spent that night in the hospital parking lot, watching fog swirl around the floodlights. My hands trembled not because I was scared, but because I was holding back training that once came natural. In my years as Black Ops, I learned that justice only exists when men force it into existence. But this was my own blood. I didn't trust myself to think straight. Next morning, I found the police station buzzing like a broken hive. Deputy pretended she didn't remember my name, the report number, or even Ivy's assault. "System glitch," she said. "System glitch with my daughter's life hanging in between." I left the station quiet, but inside, I was reliving memories of classified missions. Times we erased full operations with one command. Now they were using the same erasure on a girl. My girl. By afternoon, I made 2 calls. First to Julian, my old intel tech from the unit, the only man who knew what I'd done for this country. Second, to a name that hadn't left my lips since the divorce, Harper, my ex-wife. Julian picked up fast, his voice still sharp. "Didn't expect to hear from you again, Mason. You still off-grid?" "Not anymore. I need you to trace a deleted police report. Timestamp. Last night, 2:17 hours. Victim's name, Ivy Mason." There was a pause long enough to make my blood run colder. "Mason," Julian said. "You sure you want me digging there? That's not a data loss. That's an intentional blackout." "Then trace who ordered it." When I hung up, Harper finally answered. Her tone was distant, controlled. "I heard about Ivy." "How bad?" "Bad enough I can't sleep." She sighed, like someone who knew more than she wanted to admit. "We shouldn't talk over the phone," she whispered. "Just let the police handle it." "The same police who deleted her report?" Silence. Then a click. She hung up. That evening, I sat by Ivy's bedside again. Machines softly beeped. Her face was pale, her breath light. I promised her under my breath, "You don't worry, baby. I'm not calling in soldiers this time." Just the truth. But even as I said it, I didn't believe myself. Because men like me, we weren't built for peace. Outside her window, I spotted the same black SUV passing slow under the hospital lights. Tinted glass. Government plate frame. I knew that type of shift pattern, surveillance rotation. Someone wasn't just watching my daughter, they were watching me. And when the SUV parked across the street, engine idling, I saw one silhouette move. A man holding a phone against his ear, turning straight toward Ivy's window. I pressed my hand against the display glass between us, my reflection colliding with hers. The soldier in me whispered what the father tried to ignore. You're already back in the field, Mason. Whether you want it or not. And for the first time since I left combat zones, I felt something dangerous, calm. The kind that comes right before a storm. By dawn, the black SUV was gone. But I knew what it meant. Someone wanted me to stop asking questions. I didn't. Inside the hospital, Ivy's room was silent except for the soft hiss of oxygen. The nurse said she hadn't spoken again. I brushed her hair off her forehead, whispering, "You hold on. I'll get them all, but not with a gun this time." I stepped out before sunrise, my mind running operational models like old missions. No weapons, no backup, just truth as leverage. At the precinct, the same sergeant avoided my eyes. "Sir, I already told you. You didn't tell me anything," I cut in. "You're part of it, aren't you?" He stiffened. "Look, I don't know what you're talking about. Please leave before I have to." I slammed my ID card on the counter. The faded black ops insignia still carried weight. "Before you what?" "File another deleted report." He swallowed hard before gesturing toward the back offices. "Captain's in today. You can talk to him if you want." That was progress. Dangerous progress. Captain Wallace's office stood too clean. The blinds half shut. He was mid-coffee when I walked in. "Mr. Mason," he said, his voice oiled with fake authority. "I know you're upset. Upset." I repeated quietly. "Try trained." He smirked, setting the cup down. "You had your time, soldier. But this is civilian ground. I suggest you let professionals handle it." I took a single step closer. "The professionals who deleted her footage and filed her as a violent offender while she's in a coma?" He didn't respond, just stared until my reflection shifted in his glass frame. I saw his finger tap twice on the desk, subtle signal to someone outside. "Back up." I turned before the door opened. Two patrolmen waiting, hands near belts. "We're done here," he said. "Not yet," I replied. "Not until I see every report you buried." He leaned back slowly. "You won't find anything. It's already gone." That phrase again, same as the man in the SUV. It wasn't coincidence. It was a script. I left calmly, but inside I was counting. 5 heartbeats, 7 steps, 20 seconds to reach my car. I'd lived through ambushes with less warning. At noon, my burner vibrated. "Julian." His voice came low, tight. "You were right, Mason." I cracked their archive. The report wasn't just deleted, it was rerouted through federal terminal access. Whoever did it used a Department of Justice backdoor. Meaning this isn't local corruption. Someone hires laundering the deletion chain, and not for the first time. I shut my eyes for a moment. Names. He hesitated. Captain Wallace's credentials confirmed the deletion, but his authorization was cleared by a secondary phone, registered under Harper Mason. I went silent. Julian sighed. "You sure you want the rest?" "Say it." "She's been taking deposits from the father of one of the 9 suspects. Regular transfers. Cleaned through charity accounts. The kind rich families used to pay off silence." It hit harder than any bullet ever had. "You're saying my ex-wife sold her daughter out." "Mason, I'm saying somebody paid her to stay quiet." The line went dead before I could answer. Harper's house still looked postcard perfect when I reached it. The same porch lights, same wind chimes Ivy painted when she was 10. My chest felt heavier with every step. When she opened the door, she froze. "Mason, you can't just show up like this." Ivy's file vanished. "And your name's attached to the officer who made it happen." Her face drained. "Where did you hear that?" From someone who still believes in honesty. She turned away, trembling. You don't understand. They said, if I didn't cooperate, they'd make it worse for her. Worse. I snapped. You thought this isn't worse? Seeing her like that? Hearing the word silence, bought with my child's pain. Tears spilled down her face. They said she was meeting one of the boys willingly, that the video would ruin her name. I didn't know it would go this far. I stepped closer, voice breaking. You let them own her story because they frightened you? I've been in jungles full of monsters, and never once did I trade truth for comfort. She dropped to the couch, shaking. You don't know who they are. Those fathers. Mason, they're untouchable. I picked up her phone from the counter. Transfers stared back at me. Coded accounts, identical timestamps. One of the names stood out, P. Wallace. Captain Preston Wallace. The man whose office I'd just left. I swallowed hard. So that's how the circle completes. Harper whispered, what are you going to do? What I always do, I said quietly. Finish what someone tried to erase. Outside, headlights washed across the driveway. Not police. Black sedan. No plates. Down, I said. She ducked instinctively as two men stepped out, both wearing dark suits. The first knocked once, pretending polite. The second adjusted his jacket, weapon bulge clear under fabric. I opened the door before they could. Evening. The taller one smiled. You Mason? Depends who's asking. We're associates of Captain Wallace. Just checking in. You've been visiting a few places you shouldn't. I crossed my arms. And if I don't stop? He grinned. Then your problems multiply. He reached into his vest, too fast. My instinct took over. His arm bent backward before he knew it, and he hit the porch rail hard. The second one lunged, too slow. I slammed him into the wall, ripped the pistol free, and shoved it back into his chest. Tell Preston he picked the wrong father, I said. The taller one wheezed. You can't hide forever, soldier. These men, I don't hide. I cut in. I track. I left both men alive, but shaken, their silence worth more than death. When I got back to the car, Julian's second message waited. You were right. Found the deleted bodycam cache. 9 fathers, 1 police captain, 1 retired judge named Victor Hale. Files coming through now. I clicked the attachment and saw Ivy's name tagged under private case. No public record. A still frame loaded. Her face. Surrounded. Pleading. And behind the boys? A group of older men pulling gloves on. One looked straight into the camera. Victor Hale. I shut the laptop quietly. My reflection stared back at me. The soldier they'd tried to bury was awake again. And this time, it wasn't about war. It was about truth. The sound of rain began just as I closed the laptop. Heavy and steady, like the world trying to wash away something foul. But nothing could rinse what I'd seen. 9 privileged sons smirking while my daughter begged for help. And their fathers, not intervening, not horrified, managing the scene. I sat there for a long time, just watching the storm through the windshield. My hands didn't tremble anymore. That scared me, because it meant I was back in mission mode. Julian's voice buzzed in my ear through the earpiece. You got it, Mason? Yeah, I said, staring at the still frame frozen on the screen. But it's not enough. I want the original footage, not screenshots. You realize what you're asking for? That's buried behind judicial clearance. Judge Victor signed those encryptions himself. Then I start with the people he's protecting. I thought you said no war. I looked out into the endless dark beyond the parking lot. Not war, Julian. Audit. By morning, Harper sat at her dining table, eyes hollow from the night before. She'd opened the door before I knocked, like she'd been sitting there rehearsing what to say. I didn't sleep, she admitted, voice raw. Guilt has that effect, I said evenly. She flinched. You think I don't hate myself? Those men, they made it sound like it was just a drunken accident. I wanted to believe that. I stared at her, unreadable. What did they promise you? She hesitated, then slid an envelope across the table. They said if I stayed silent, they'd cover Ivy's treatment and make the story disappear before it hit the news. I opened it. Thick stacks of cash, New bills, cereals clean, no fingerprints. This isn't help, Harper. This is evidence. Tears trembled in her eyes. I didn't know what else to do. You were always gone. Every time I needed you, you were halfway across the world. Her words hit something sharp in me. I sat down, the soldier gone, just a father bleeding under the weight of memory. I was fighting for strangers, I said slowly. But I would have walked through fire if you'd just asked. She wiped her cheeks. You think you can fix this? No, I said. But I can end the lie. She whispered. Then you'll die trying. I stood and leaned close enough for her to see the years in my face. Then it'll be on record this time. That same afternoon, Julian texted an address, an abandoned law office linked to Victor Hale, the retired judge. When I arrived, the place looked untouched for years. Dust on the blinds, faint smell of old paper. I pushed the door open and swept the flashlight across the floor. Folders everywhere, tags labeled civil settlements, closed juvenile cases, private agreements. But one drawer caught my attention, triple padlocked, tag burned off. Beneath the dust, faint letters read IVY. I pried it open carefully. Inside, not just one file, dozens. Photos of other victims. Reports marked, void by court order. Every one linked to cases involving powerful families. It wasn't about my daughter. It was a pattern, a protection ring. Behind me, a voice spoke softly. I told them you wouldn't stop. I turned fast. Harper stood in the doorway, soaked from rain, eyes red. You followed me. I had to. They'll kill you if they find you here. Her gaze dropped to the files. You weren't supposed to see that. Supposed to, I repeated quietly. You knew about all this? She nodded weakly. I saw Victor's office once. He said it was temporary, just a way to protect their reputations until trial. And you believe that? I wanted to, she cried. You think I wanted my daughter part of this circus? You don't know what it's like being powerless against these men. I do, I said softly. I was trained by men just like them. Harper stepped closer, clutching something in her coat pocket. Mason, there's more. The night Ivy was attacked, she wasn't supposed to be there. She followed one of the boys from campus. She'd discovered something. Their fathers were moving military hardware through city contracts. She told me she was going to expose them. I froze. What? What kind of hardware? Guns, drones, unregistered rifles. She thought she could record proof. But they found out first. Slow dread spread through me like cold steel. So this wasn't random. It was silencing. Harper nodded slowly. She wasn't just a victim. She was the threat. We stood there in silence, the weight of truth filling the air between us. I realized why the files were guarded by a judge and a captain. It was bigger than revenge. It was national liability. And now, every move I made would put me in their crosshairs. I gathered the files into my duffel. Where's Victor now? He still lives in Ridgeview Heights. Private estate, Harper said. He plays golf with half the state's prosecutors. Then he won't see me coming. She stepped in front of me. Mason, you can't confront him. He'll make you disappear before you reach the gate. I met her eyes. Then I'll disappear on my terms. That night, I waited in the car outside Victor's estate. Engine off, headlights dark. His mansion glowed faintly through rain. Wide windows, quiet halls, polished cars in the driveway. The kind of life built on other people's silence. I slipped out, every footstep deliberate. My reflection ghosted in the glass as I reached the side door. Years of infiltration training came back, automatic like breathing. One pin, 2 clicks, lock turned. Inside, the air smelled of paper and whiskey. A TV murmured in another room. Then his voice, calm, deliberate, unshaken by time. I thought you might find me eventually, Mason. I stepped into the doorway. Victor Hale sat by the fireplace, aged but alert, a tablet glowing beside him. You deleted my daughter's case, I said quietly. He took a sip of whiskey. I saved your daughter from public ruin. By letting her die unprotected? He shrugged. You of all people should understand. Collateral damage keeps the peace. Something inside me cracked, not loud, but final. Peace, I repeated. You call that peace? Victor leaned back. You want names, evidence, justice? Then bring me everything you stole tonight, or you'll never see the full file. He tapped the tablet. A thumbnail appeared, Ivy's face. Alive, hours before the attack. Footage I hadn't seen. You still have the uncut video, I whispered. A thin smile crossed his lips. Of course I do. Knowledge is currency. I stared at him, wondering how many lives he'd bought with silence. Then I said, tell me something, Victor. How much does a father's soul cost these days? He didn't answer. I turned for the door, voice steady. When this ends, Judge, you won't be able to delete what's coming. I walked into the rain. My phone buzzed once. Julian's message appearing in dim blue light. Someone's inside your house. Not police. The message glowed on my phone screen. Someone's inside your house. Not police. My grip tightened around the steering wheel until the leather creaked. Rain hammered the windshield while lightning blinked over the ridge road ahead. I turned the ignition, headlights still off, and rolled down the street with the stealth of old drills. Muscle memory from every dark op I swore I'd left behind. By the time I reached the driveway, the front door was half cracked open. No sound, just the faint hum of electricity from inside. I slipped through a side entry, every nerve awake. The air smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and wet shoes. My daughter's framed photos on the wall were shifted, small, deliberate. Someone wanted me to know they'd been here long enough to study my life. In the living room, one light burned, just above Ivy's old piano. A man stood beside it, calm, coat still dripping. He didn't raise a weapon. He just spoke softly. Mr. Mason, I was asked to deliver a message. From who? He smiled faintly. You already know. Judge Hale. Go ahead, I said. He recommends you drop the matter. In return, he'll see to your safety. Your ex-wife's too, though hers depends on continued silence. And if I don't drop it? That thin calm didn't change. Then we pretend your daughter's file never existed, and neither did you. He leaned forward slightly, letting me see the pistol tucked at his waist, standard intimidation. The mistake he made was assuming I'd flinch like the others. I took one step closer, then another. When he raised his voice, I moved faster, shoulder against his chest, elbow into his forearm, gun turned, click. He stumbled back into the piano's wooden edge with a dull note that vibrated through the room. His breath hitched. You think you scare me? I'm counting on it, I said. Tell Victor there's no deal. And tell your boss's boss I'm done playing civilian. I shoved him toward the open door. He staggered out, humiliated, alive. Sending corpses would make headlines. Sending fear would keep them guessing. After he was gone, I grabbed my phone and called Julian. You see that? I saw movement, yeah? You good? They sent one. Just one. Which means they're testing how far they can push. Julian's voice cracked with static. You still got the files? They're safe. Then move, he said sharply. I decrypted one of the smaller folders. Mason, this is massive. Half those fathers are funding contracts with defense pipelines. They're moving stolen rifles through dummy federal programs. My silence said enough. He added quietly, you need an exit plan. They'll burn the city before they let that leak. No exits, I said. Only exposure. By morning, the rain stopped. I parked near the courthouse where Victor Hale used to work, now locked down for renovations. Outside, every guard wore private security patches. They weren't watching for vandals. They were watching for me. I circled to a nearby cafe, sat where I could see the front doors. The walls hummed with courthouse memories. Men like Hale pretending to deliver justice while burying proof under signatures. I transferred Julian's decrypted files to an encrypted drive, labeling it untouchable. If I went down, at least the truth wouldn't. 20 minutes later, a shadow approached my table. Gray coat, sharp eyes. It was Grant, my old teammate. Mason, he said under his breath. You should have called. Didn't think ghosts carried phones. He sat opposite me. You're stirring up something bigger than you think. Hale's network runs deep, Finance, weapons, local law. He's protected as long as those contracts keep breathing. So I suffocate them. Grant sighed. Still the same old operator. I leaned in. You know why I can't stop? That girl lying in a hospital bed. She's the only piece of humanity I didn't lose over there. He stared at his coffee, then nodded slowly. Fine. I'll help you. But if we're doing this, we do it smart. Quiet. We need leverage, not blood. That's all I want, I said. Leverage. Grant handed me a small USB stick. Inside is Victor's offsite ledger. Lists every transaction connecting the gang fathers, police donations, and federal accounts. The moment this hits daylight, everyone on that chain collapses. He paused, eyes flicking toward the cafe window. But you need to survive long enough to use it. Outside, a black sedan rolled by, same plate frame as before. Grant muttered, We're tagged. They're sweeping near. We split fast. No words, just hand signals. I slid out the back alley, cutting across a parking structure, vanishing behind delivery trucks until the tail lost vision. That evening, I drove to the courthouse again. Phones silenced, rearview checked. Inside the storage wing, I found a sealed evidence room, Victor's department archives. I bypassed the keypad using a trick Julian once taught me, looping the circuit with a metal clip until the door buzzed open. Rows of boxes towered inside, paper records going back years, right where the rot lived. I scanned tags until I froze on one marked Case 917, B, Internal Affairs. Inside, photos of officers, invoices, credit links, and witness statements. Among them, a report signed by Captain Wallace, dated the same week of Ivy's attack. I read one line twice before believing it. Victim was considered cooperative under supervision, withheld information classified trade evidence. They'd used her, questioned her, then silenced her. The sound of a door creaking pulled my attention, footsteps echoing. Someone else was here. I edged behind the shelves as a flashlight beam sliced through the rows. A voice whispered, You shouldn't have come here, soldier. I recognized him instantly, Captain Wallace himself. Alone, gun raised, eyes burning with tired arrogance. He said, We both know how this ends. You hand over what you found, maybe you walk out. I stayed still, like you let my daughter walk out. That was an accident, he snapped. She stuck her neck where it didn't belong. She belonged everywhere truth still existed, I said quietly. He stepped closer. You can't win, Mason. Every file you touch gets buried twice as deep. You're up against men who decide which wars even exist. I moved before he finished, ripped a box from the shelf, tossed it into his light. He flinched, shot once, missed. I grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, gun clattering on the floor. He slammed into the table edge, groaning. I held him there, breathing steady. Who ordered it? No one. I applied pressure until cartilage popped. Who ordered it? Victor, he gasped. It always goes through him. He handles the cleanup. The fathers pay, he collects. That's how it works. I let go. He dropped to the floor coughing. This won't stop him, Wallace muttered. He's untouchable. I started walking away. Funny thing about power, people stop checking if it can bleed. Outside, night swallowed the courthouse again. I slid into the driver's seat, rain starting to fall anew. My phone buzzed, Julian again. Mason, he said fast, almost panicked. Someone's deleting my access. Remote lockout. They're erasing the files right now. Where are you? Downtown lab. 3rd floor. Hurry. His voice broke off in static, then silence. Lightning flashed through the windshield. I felt that familiar cold crawl across my spine once more. They were cleaning house, and I was next on their list. By the time I hit the downtown turnoff, the city looked like a storm swallowing itself. Sirens howled 2 blocks away, neon lights dripping across the rain-streaked glass. I pressed harder on the gas. I didn't care about speed traps, red lights, or the camera systems that probably already had my plate logged. Julian's last words replayed in my head, then the static. He never froze like that. Never panicked. The man could run a black site server while drinking cold coffee on 2 hours of sleep, which meant whatever was happening inside that lab wasn't digital, it was physical. The building came into view, an aging tech center with more broken glass than employees. Every light except one was out, the faint blue glow of the third floor. I parked 2 blocks over and moved fast. The alley smelled of ozone and engine oil. The elevator was dead, so I took the back stairwell. 3 floors up, step by step, ears tuned to every scrape and echo. The door to Julian's lab was ajar. A single red LED from a server rack blinked like a dying pulse. The smell hit me first, gun oil and dust. Then I saw him. Julian was slumped over his console, head tilted forward. No blood, no visible wound. I checked his pulse. Still warm, but faint. Not a clean kill. Sedation. Behind him, every monitor ran code. Delete scripts looping endlessly. They weren't just wiping data. They were rewriting identities. Erasing both victim and hacker. I pressed his shoulder. Come on, tech man. Don't check out on me now. His eyes flickered. They found the mirror drive, he whispered. Who? Internal Affairs Task Unit. Supposedly. But it's not real IA, their black contract. You copy the footage? He nodded weakly. One set, physical drive, in drawer. I dug through the cabinet until my fingers hit metal. Thin, rectangular. The same drive I'd labeled untouchable. Then a noise cut through the hum. Footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, coordinated. Not amateurs. Julian, don't move, I whispered. He tried to speak, but his throat closed again. I ducked behind a server stack as a trio of men entered, flashlights angled down. No uniforms, no badges. The lead man's voice carried that clipped order tone. Room secure. Target incapacitated. In the corner, one of them crouched near Julian, checked his pulse. Still breathing. Good, the leader said. We need him alive until the secondary deletes finish transmitting. Then, cleanup. They didn't see me move. Years of silent entry drills came back like muscle memory. I waited for the third man to separate. He did, stepping toward the far server wall to check the backups. I slipped behind him, yanked his collar, and slammed him into the rack with just enough force to knock him cold without breaking metal. The sound drew the second man's attention. He turned, gun raised. I grabbed the first man's weapon mid-fall, fired low, single controlled shot. Leg hit. He went down screaming. The leader swung around fast, sharp reflexes. I barely rolled behind a table as his round shattered glass overhead. Black Ops training, he shouted. They warned me you'd be a problem. Guess they were right, I said, sliding out from cover, returning fire. 2 shots. One clipped his shoulder, spinning him hard against the doorframe. He dropped the gun, but stayed conscious. You don't understand what you're inside of, Mason. This isn't corruption, it's continuity. Patriotic continuity. We maintain stability when your kind breaks things open. I advanced, weapon leveled. You call this stability? Drugging a witness, stabbing a kid, deleting truth. You think your daughter was innocent. He spat, blood mixing with rainwater seeping under the door. She tried to expose our system. She recorded things never meant for daylight. You should have taught her better. I froze, just long enough for his hand to flick open a small black object. Trigger switch. I dove behind the desk as a flash charge erupted, tearing through the smaller servers. Smoke and fire filled the air, lighting the room in pulses. Through the gray haze, I saw him run, stumbling, bleeding, but escaping down the hall. Julian coughed, eyes barely open. Go, he rasped. Get the drive out. I rigged mirror protocols. Can you move? He shook his head weakly. No one stays behind, I said, grabbing his shoulder, dragging him toward the stairwell. The smoke alarms had begun wailing, but no sprinklers triggered. Automatic disable, professional breach cover. By the time we hit the parking lot, my lungs felt raw. I tossed him into the passenger seat, slammed the door, and accelerated away from the burning building. Half a mile later, His breathing evened out. He whispered, "That drive, they'll hunt you now. It's the only uncorrupted link to Hale's network. If you leak it, you cripple them all. That's the plan." He looked at me through half-blind eyes. "No, Mason. You cripple the government too. That's what they're using military contracts as shields. You leak this, every operation attached collapses. Not just the corrupt ones." "I'm not leaking soldiers' names," I said. "Only the men who weaponized silence." He smiled faintly before passing out again. By morning, news drones hovered over the city, broadcasting data leak causes fire at local lab. They called it a technical overload. No mention of gunfire, no signs of bodies. Clean cover, just as predicted. I parked outside a safe house, one I'd built years ago under an assumed name. Inside, I set Julian on the couch, set up the laptop, and slipped in the drive. A dozen folders opened, names attached: Preston Wallace, Victor Hale, Senator Kellen Moore, corporate recipients, even a few defense contractors I'd briefed in my past life. The files were encrypted with identical markers, the same backdoor Julian mentioned, Federal Asset Clearance Committee. They'd created a shadow branch under the justice system to move military stock and bury civilian casualties along the way. As the data loaded, I saw more familiar names: pilots, analysts, soldiers who died in missions I'd led. Their losses recorded falsely under domestic incidents. I wasn't just fighting to clear my daughter's case. I was wading through ghosts of my own making. The phone buzzed again. Blocked number. I didn't answer, but the voicemail arrived anyway. The voice was calm, old, and venomous. "Mason, Judge Hale here. You've left bodies behind and burned taxpayer property. You want truth? Come talk. One-on-one. Bring the drive." I played it again, my knuckles widening around the phone. He was calling me out. But not to exchange files. He wanted control. I looked at Julian, still unconscious, and dialed Grant's emergency code. 3 rings. "You're still breathing," Grant said, tone dry. "IA's been buzzing all morning." Half their comms went dark. Because they were raiding us. Hale set me up. "Where's Julian?" "Alive, but out." "Then listen close," Grant said. "You can't meet Hale alone. He's old, but he's protected by men who make ghosts disappear before sunrise." "Doesn't matter," I muttered. "He wants me face to face." "That means he's scared. Or overconfident," Grant replied. "Either way, record everything." Already planned to. I tracked Hale's call to his private residence, the same estate I'd breached once before. When I reached the gated entrance, it was different this time. No guards visible, no vehicles. Too quiet for comfort. The door opened the moment I stepped in, as if motion triggered. Inside, the fireplace burned again, same chair turned toward the blaze. Victor Hale didn't stand when I entered. He simply poured another drink. "You came sooner than expected. Curiosity kills anxiety," I said. He smiled. "Do you know what Black Ops men lack the most after service? Purpose. You crave structure, morality, cause. So tell me, when you break this story, what then? You think truth feeds you? It won't. It'll kill everything left of you." I didn't respond. I set the drive on the table. "You built an empire on silence. Tonight it ends." He looked at it like a relic. "No, Mason. Tonight you realize there's no such thing as clean justice. Every system requires dirt to grow. You just refuse to play gardener. That's one way to justify rot," I said. He leaned forward. "You could join me. I could refile your daughter's legacy. Make her a whistleblower, not a scandal. Protect her name. That's what you want, isn't it?" I froze. "What are you offering?" "Loyalty. The same thing you offered this country for decades. In return, I bury your sins and elevate hers." "And what do you get?" He smiled thinly. "You don't upload the drive." Silence. Then the faint chime of my watch timer, data sync complete. The files had already transmitted to Grant's secure network 15 seconds before I entered. I said softly, "You're too late, Victor." His hand moved for the pistol under his chair. But this time I was faster. My foot hit the desk's edge, flipping it. and the gun clattered away. He shouted, "You think the world will thank you for exposing its protectors? You'll unravel everything." "No," I said coldly. "I'll rebuild whatever decent parts left." He laughed, dry, bitter. "Then say goodbye to the life you knew." "Already did." I turned for the door. Behind me, I heard him mutter, almost gently, "Your daughter wasn't supposed to die that night. She was supposed to talk." I stopped. "What?" "She met with someone before the attack. Someone you know. Someone military." I spun back, but Victor only smiled again. "You'll find out soon enough. Truth's heavier when it wears your own face." The words burned all the way to the marrow as I walked out. Outside, rain hissed through the trees, and my phone vibrated. Grant again. "Good news and bad," he said flatly. "Good. You blew the files wide. They're trending across every dark circuit. Bad. The police precinct's gone dark. All records purged. Officers detained or missing. And the 9 fathers? Unaccounted for." The sound of gunfire crackled faintly near the call's edge. "Grant." Static. Then his voice, strained. "They're coming for me too. Hale's people and the fathers. You better hurry." I ran for the car, engine roaring as rain exploded against the windshield. The city lights bled into streaks ahead, and somewhere in that chaos, 9 men were gathering again, armed, desperate, and cornered. The highway stretched like a scar cutting through the rain. My wipers barely kept rhythm with my pulse. Grant's voice had vanished after gunfire, then silence. Somewhere on the east docks, he'd gone dark. I gripped the wheel, feeling the weight of the flash drive still in my pocket. The one Hale wanted, the one that could end this all. Every turn, every streetlight, reflected ghosts of Ivy's face behind my eyes. By the time I reached the docks, the night smelled of fuel and salt water. Shipping containers lined the pier like tombstones. A single cargo lamp swayed above, lighting what looked like a bleeding shadow near the fence line. Grant. He was sitting against the wall, breathing heavy, blood slipping through his fingers. But when he saw me, he smiled faintly. "You're late." I knelt beside him. "How bad?" He glanced down. "Enough to make this conversation short. They took the backup drives, Mason, the same men from Hale's circle, Wallace, and the rest. Their sons were with them this time, armed like they knew how." His voice rasped, brittle like paper. "But I managed to keep one thing from them. Something you're gonna need." He reached into his vest and pulled out a memory card. "What's on it?" I asked. "The real footage," he said. "From Ivy's phone. Julian decrypted it before the raid. You never saw the full version." I froze. I thought it was lost. So did they. Ivy had it backed up to her college server before they attacked her. But it wasn't just their faces, Mason. It was more. I slid the card into my handheld drive and hit play. Rain hissed around us, wind cutting across the dock while the video loaded. Grainy night vision, shaky camera movement. Ivy's voice, scared but steady, filled the air. "They think I don't know, but I caught them transferring weapons through the shipping yards. 9 trucks. Same serials Dad mentioned in the classified inventory last year. If this gets out, it'll prove." The image jolted. Figures ran into frame, shadows chasing her. Then the screams, the chaos, phones dropping. Ivy's last flicker of life filled the screen. One of the fathers, Preston Wallace, yelling, "Get that camera, and call Victor." Then everything went black. I stopped the playback, jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. Grant whispered, "This isn't a gang attack anymore, Mason. It's a federal cover-up. Your daughter died trying to expose it." My hands trembled, rage, grief, disbelief blending into something wordless. She trusted me to protect her. Grant tried to speak, but his breath faltered. "You still can. Finish it. Make her voice the last one they can erase." He exhaled once, still quiet. The waves hit the pier, echoing like distant artillery. I closed his eyes gently, a silent salute for a soldier who died fighting a different kind of war. Then I slid the card into my pocket beside the flash drive and stood up. Somewhere behind the container wall, an engine started. Lights flickered. 2, then 3 vehicles. I crouched behind cover and peered through the shadows. Police cruisers. But no sirens. No uniforms. Just black coats and armed silhouettes stepping into the ring. Wallace climbed out first, bandage still fresh from the courthouse fight. Behind him, 2 younger men carrying semi-autos, faces too young, eyes too empty. His sons. He shouted, "You think leaking files makes you a hero, Mason? You turned a private matter into a spectacle. She was your victim." I called back. "You could have stopped them." He sneered. "We did what we had to do. She was trespassing, recording restricted shipments. You don't cross the men who feed this system." "And the system?" I snapped. "It's feeding on kids now." Wallace raised his gun. "She sinned against structure. You always thought rules never applied to you Black Ops freaks. Time to learn consequences." His sons moved wide, flanking positions perfectly, training sharp, practiced. My stomach turned. They'd been raised for this. I ducked low as bullets tore through the container behind me. One round nicked my sleeve, the heat burning my arm. I rolled between crates, grabbed Grant's dropped sidearm, and returned 2 quick shots. Distraction, not kill. I wasn't here for revenge. Only proof. As they ducked, I powered on my phone, livestream mode already primed from Julian's protocols. 1 click, and the video of Ivy's recording uploaded straight to the secure data feed. Wallace didn't realize until the echo of his own voice filled the air, his recorded line from the footage, "Get that camera and call Victor." The sound bounced off metal and water like judgment itself. His face paled. "What did you do?" "Made sure the world heard your confession," I said. He panicked, firing wildly until one of his sons shouted, "Dad, online feeds are blowing up." They pulled out burner phones, screens glowing with the same video, now spreading everywhere. Wallace screamed in fury, turned his gun toward me again, but before he fired, headlights burst across the dock. Federal SUVs skidded into view, real agents this time, not his puppets. Orders barked, rifles raised. "Drop your weapons." The boys hesitated. Wallace didn't. He lifted his gun toward the agents and fired 1 reckless shot, then fell when 2 rounds hit center mass. He crumpled soundlessly beside the pier, his weapon sinking beneath the tide. His sons were handcuffed seconds later, shouting their father's name into the storm. I stayed very still, hands raised, until one agent recognized me from the old clearance files. "Captain Mason," he said carefully, "we've been tracking this data breach for 48 hours. You just blew a federal ring wide open." Ivy Mason blew it open. I corrected, voice flat. "She recorded it. I just pressed upload." He nodded slowly. "You'll need to come with us. There'll be debriefs, hearings, later," I said, glancing at Grant's still body. "First, I bury a friend." By morning, the news had exploded. 9 families under federal probe for arms trafficking and police corruption. Victor Hale's face flashed across every major network. Judges, captains, senators, arrest warrants lined in digital ink. I watched it quietly from a motel room window, coffee cooling in my hand. Harper called once, crying, saying she'd seen the footage too, saying she'd never forgive herself, but finally understood what Ivy had tried to do. "I just wanted to protect her," she whispered through tears. "So did I said. "We both failed." But her truth didn't. Outside, the storm had broken. The air felt clear, but heavy. I powered my phone again, opening the uploaded stream one last time. The final frame froze on Ivy's frightened yet defiant face. She looked afraid, yes, but also unbreakable. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost. The war was over. The mission wasn't revenge, it was legacy. The world had woken up screaming. By sunrise, every screen, every feed, every newspaper headline was splashed with Ivy's footage. Millions had watched my daughter's last brave breath. They called her the girl who exposed the hidden war. Hashtags trended, pundits speculated, and politicians stumbled over each other on live TV pretending to be shocked. But I knew better. The machine had simply eaten one of its own. Now it needed to spit out a few sacrificial names before tightening control again. Victor Hale was still out there. Not arrested. Not touched. Just silent. And silence from men like him never meant fear. It meant planning. I poured black coffee into a chipped mug and stared through the motel window as helicopters thudded across the skyline. Every vibration in the walls made me remember field raids, the calm before more chaos. For the first time in decades, I wasn't fighting someone else's war. This one was personal. The burner phone rang once. Unknown number. Who is this? A woman's voice. Controlled, crisp. My name is Fiona Miles, federal prosecutor. We're building the case against Victor Hale. You're our primary source. I'm not giving interviews. This isn't an interview, she said. It's survival. Meet me downtown, Federal Annex Building, noon. Come alone. Click. The courthouse plaza felt wrong the moment I stepped out of the cab. Too still, too watched. Fiona Miles waited under the entrance arch. Neat ponytail, tin coat, eyes like someone who'd learned to lie only when necessary. She motioned toward a side corridor away from the main cameras. We'll talk here. You understand we need your cooperation? I gave you everything, I said. The drives, the files, the proof. Yes, but ICA's oversight panel wants a personal statement. They need details only you have. The audio of Victor Hale admitting the system existed. Do you still have it? I kept my tone flat. I turned that over to your forensics team 2 nights ago. Her blink was too slow. That's impossible. Why? Because our archives say it never arrived. I felt the shift instantly, the air tightening, footsteps echoing in the hall. My hand itched toward the knife clip hidden in my jacket. You're not here to protect me, are you? She held up both palms, calm. Mason, listen to me. Hale still has allies inside. They've erased the chain of custody. You're the only clean link left. That makes you their target. Before I could answer, the window at the corridor's end burst inward, 2 black-suited men firing suppressed shots. Fiona dropped, pulling me behind the bench. Plastered dust rained down like snow. She shouted, Go? Use the fire stairwell. What about you? I'll stall them. I hesitated for half a second before grabbing the discarded drive and running through the smoke. The stairwell door creaked open under my shoulder. Gunfire followed, sparks jumping from the metal frame. I hit the steps 2 at a time until I reached the basement service exit. Outside, rain slicked the pavement again. My heart hammered steady, combat calm. I sprinted through back alleys until I reached the old tunnels beneath the rail yard, a maze only city workers and men like me ever used. When I finally stopped, my breath ghosted in the cold. Fiona's voice echoed in memory. They've erased the chain of custody. She'd risked her life to warn me, which meant there was still one chance of exposing Hale for good. The ledger. Julian had told me before he died that Hale's financial records were curated through offshore shells under fake charity fronts. If I could trace a live transaction, I could tie him directly to those shipments Ivy recorded. I powered on the old laptop from my go bag and connected the last surviving encryption chain. The interface blinked, struggling against surveillance locks. 10%, 40, 80. Then a message line popped up mid-screen. Leave now. Roof 5 floors up. No sender ID, no IP trace. I looked up. Through the grating overhead, a faint red dot blinked. Not a target, a relay laser. Someone was tracking me, guiding me. I found the maintenance ladder and climbed fast. The roof opened to the night again. Noisy, wet, alive with city hum. Across the adjacent building stood Harper. She looked different, hair tucked under a hood, eyes hollow but clear. In her hands, she held a folder sealed with red tape. You shouldn't be here, I called. She stepped closer, rain streaking down her coat. You think you're the only one trying to make things right? I took this from Hale's penthouse before they locked it down. She handed me the folder. Inside, photocopies of bank statements, donation contracts, even private letters. But one page froze my pulse cold. A list of payments labeled Defense Asset Compensation, Ivy Mason. Dates, amounts, signatures, and one last note, scribbled in pen. Transfer approved by Operative Grant Walker. I stared at her. Grant. She nodded. He was supposed to cover your daughter's safety. Hale paid him months before that night. Grant wasn't crooked, just terrified. They owned him. The rain hissed between us, heavy as disbelief. So I've been fighting ghosts, I said quietly. And one of them was on my own payroll. Harper's voice cracked. They made him choose, your life or hers. Something inside me hollowed out completely. And they took both. She touched my arm. Victor's still moving money. The files prove the network's alive. If you intercept their next transaction, you end it. How? Through Victor's attorney, Preston Hale Jr., he handles all transfers offshore. He's flying out tomorrow night. Catch him before the jet leaves. I stared at the skyline, then down at Harper. You're coming with me. She shook her head. They'll use me as leverage if I'm seen with you. You go alone. Just finish it, Mason. Do it for her. Before I could say more, searchlights swept across the rooftops. Drones hummed low, mechanical hornets tightening formation. They found me, she whispered. Run. No, she said. You still can. She pushed the folder into my hands just as the first drone fired, bursting glass and steel. I threw myself over the edge, rolled onto the next level down, and crawled beneath an exhaust vent. Smoke and gunfire lit up the rooftop above, her silhouette lost in chaos. For 3 long minutes, all I heard was rain. Then, silence. I pressed the folder to my chest, every heartbeat a vow. They'd taken everything. My team, my wife, my child. But now I had what they feared most, paper truth. The bloodlines of power had names, signatures, and bank codes, all hiding behind Hale's smirk. And when that jet tried leaving tomorrow night, I'd be waiting on the runway. The clock on the terminal wall read 10:47 p.m. when I entered Ridgeport Airfield. Private runways shimmered under slick rain, engines humming behind high gates wrapped in gold-tinted logos. On paper, this was a philanthropic foundation hub. In truth, it was where the 9 fathers gathered to hide billions in weapons contracts. And tonight, where one of them planned to vanish. I blended with the maintenance crew, hauling a worn duffel over my shoulder, cap low against the drizzle. The folder Harper gave me was wrapped in plastic inside. Every transaction, every check, every buried name rested heavy against my ribs like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Down the tarmac, the Hale jet was prepping. Rounded fuselage, polished silver wings. Same plane Ivy once mentioned she'd photographed at the docks. Now, it waited to lift off into darkness with proof of every buried crime strapped in its cargo bay. 2 silhouettes appeared near the boarding stairs. Preston Hale Jr. and his longtime advisor, Colin, both dressed too neatly for an emergency flight. Their conversation carried across the wind like sharp wire. Senator Moore's frozen assets don't concern me, Preston was saying. Father wants control of the leak narrative before sunrise. He promised me containment. His words still mean something. Colin replied, lower. Only if his disease doesn't kill him first. The old man's deteriorating fast. He coughed blood on the call earlier. I felt a cold satisfaction twist in my gut. Hale was dying, but still fighting to bury others with him. At the rear fence, 2 mercenaries in black jackets stood guard near the fuel trucks. I recognized the patch, Red Crest Security, one of Victor's private firms, same that raided Julian's lab. Familiar enemies, predictable routines. I waited until one of them stepped aside for a cigarette. Then I broke cover, moving with rain as my camouflage. A quick rush, one silent chokehold, one shift of weight, and the man sank into the mud soundlessly. The other turned, puzzled, and found the muzzle of his own rifle under his chin before he could blink. I left both breathing, tied, gagged, stripped of radios. Violence didn't feed justice anymore. it only delayed it. The next entry point was the jet hangar's side door, sealed but old-fashioned. 2 pins, one-time bypass, click. Inside, the blue-white floodlights cut cold lines across steel and exhaust haze. Preston's voice echoed closer now. "You have the archives ready?" he demanded. Colin answered, "Yes, sir. All physical drives shipped. Once that jet's airborne, we can scrub the rest remotely." I stepped from the shadows and said, "Not this time." They turned. Preston's perfect expression cracked when he recognized me. "You again? I thought you were detained by federal order." "You thought wrong." He motioned at Colin. "Call Hale. Now." I tossed the folder onto a nearby bench. It opened halfway, papers fluttering like ghosts of every lie his family told. "That's your father's handwriting," I said. "Transfer approvals. False shell signatures. My daughter's name's in there, listed as an asset." Colin froze. "You said the files were destroyed." Preston's jaw twitched. "They were. Unless you're bluffing, Mason." "Try reading," I said quietly. Page 6. He glanced down just long enough for me to see panic bloom behind his arrogance. These are internal drafts. They don't prove purchase intent. They prove conscience," I interrupted. "And you'll have to explain them to everyone watching right now." His brow furrowed. "Watching?" I tapped the camera in my lapel. Live feed glowing faintly red. Federal network. Same as the one Ivy used. For a second, Preston looked like a boy, stripped of his empire's armor. Then he snapped back, eyes full of inherited cruelty. "Do you think you can humiliate my family again? Father built this nation's shadow structure while you were fetching orders." I stepped closer. "And your father's dying under it. He sent me once. Black Ops deployments he signed with civilian funding. He broke oath, and now he's sick from his own poison." He laughed bitterly. "And you want to play savior? Please. You're a soldier. Dogs like you need masters. You fall apart without someone giving you a cause." "You're right," I said softly. "I lost my cause the moment she died. I'm just here to give it meaning." For a fraction of a second, the storm outside silenced. The air thickened, every drop, every hum of engines holding still. Then a third voice, older, deeper, hollow with fatigue, echoed from a speaker overhead. "Enough, Preston." Victor Hale's voice. Remote. Weak but unmistakable. "I'm watching, Mason. I knew you'd trace the line." I turned toward the security intercom. "Then watch this. Your heirs are crumbling, Victor. Your empire's burning online. You can't erase it this time." "Erase it?" His voice rasped into a cough. "Son, you still don't understand. They built the system to survive exposure. You hand them chaos, they sell order. They win either way." I clench my fists. Not when truth outruns profit. Truth dies in fatigue. People forget, media moves on, data decays. But money regenerates. And now, every soldier like you is a fossil in my design. Preston looked horrified. "Father, stop talking. They're recording this." There was a long pause. Then a sound like a labored sigh filled the hangar. "Let him record," Victor said. "Let them all hear. I started the Shadow Wars long before Mason. But the children, my students, they took it further. Even now, they're coming. You think you've ended it? You just invited transition." Static cut the broadcast short. Preston screamed at the console, smashing it with his palm. Dad. But all that came through was weak feedback and a final faint cough. Lights flickered, power surge. Then I heard the unmistakable thump of approaching rotors outside. A helicopter. More headlights streaking across tarmac. At least 4 SUVs sliding to a stop by the main gate. Hale's reinforcements, corporate paramilitaries. Colin panicked, grabbing a weapon. "They're here for us." Preston looked torn between rage and terror. He wouldn't abandon me. "He just did," I said. I stepped back, voice firm but low. "If you want to live, walk out with me. Testify against him. Name every father, every payment, and you walk out breathing." Preston's silence stretched long. Then the echo of the helicopter grew louder. He swallowed, lifting his gun halfway. That's not how men like us survive, he said coldly. I shook my head. Then you're already dead. He pulled the trigger first, but by then I was gone, throwing the overhead switch that killed half the hangar lights. Darkness swallowed his next shot. Sparks flared as I slammed into Colin, disarmed, kicked the gun away, then pressed the emergency beacon. Sirens wailed from the outer decks. Federal emergency code Julian had embedded in my vest months ago. Through shattered windows, I saw red and blue flashers approach, real agents this time. Preston froze between choices. For a brief moment, guilt wavered through his eyes. Then he ran, vanishing toward the runway. Agents stormed in seconds later. I raised both hands. Colin hit the floor, babbling everything. I told the lead agent, the rest's on that jet. Pilot's prepping escape with the data core. She nodded sharply, radioing pursuit teams. As they hauled Colin away, I looked out at the storm, watching the jet's engines ignite, fiery blue against the crawling dark. For a moment, I thought Preston might actually escape again. But then the runway erupted in flashing red. Tires screeched. Agents swarmed. The jet halted under their floodlights. The cycle was breaking, one name, one arrest at a time. And for the first time since Ivy's scream had haunted the night, I exhaled without anger. The hangar doors rattled as another wave of wind pushed through. Blue lights painted the wet tarmac where armed agents gathered around the arrested men. I watched through the glass as Preston Hale Jr. sat cuffed on the ground, face buried in his hands. For the first time, the arrogance was gone. He looked hollow. An officer stepped over to me. We'll process him before dawn. But Mason, director wants your statement tonight. Director? She nodded toward the dark SUV rolling to a stop. A door opened, and out stepped a tall, silver-haired man in a charcoal coat, Federal Director Victor Hale himself. Every part of me froze. The arrest team stiffened, confused, uncertain. He wasn't dead. He was here. He stepped closer, frail but steady, eyes sharp behind the sickness. You've always been thorough, Mason, even when you shouldn't be. I felt every muscle tighten. You faked the hospital records. I needed freedom, he rasped, voice low but cutting. You forced me into the open. Congratulations. The lead agent turned. Sir, we have orders from Justice Division, orders created by me. Hale interrupted, waving the man silent. These men work for my division. Not yours, not his. The system still breathes because I allow it to. I stared at him, disgust curling in my gut. You're still trying to play judge. He smiled faintly. Not trying. Succeeding. While you've been chasing bloodlines, I've been negotiating power transfers. My empire doesn't die because one tired soldier got emotional. I have everything, I said. Bank logs, transcripts, shadow authorizations. You're finished. He looked amused. Do you really think the public distinguishes between truth and noise anymore? Tomorrow, your story will be a conspiracy thread, and I'll remain the man who cleaned it up. The agents exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to cuff him or salute him. For a moment, I thought about the thousands of missions I'd done for handwritten orders like his. Classified memos signed for stability purposes. I was part of the disease I was trying to cure. Why her? I whispered, taking a step forward. Why my daughter? Hale tilted his head. Because she was efficient. Bright, fearless, persistent, like you. She stumbled onto a shipment case we couldn't risk exposing. I wanted her quiet, not dead. But she resisted. They panicked. Things escalated. You call that escalation? I barked. She bled out in an alley while you deleted her name from the database. He finally looked tired, grinding his jaw, eyes heavy. Collateral is the price of security. You of all men understand that. Something snapped inside me. A clean, final break. No, I said, voice sharp as glass. Collateral is what cowards call consequence when they don't have the guts to face truth. Hale studied me. Then shoot me. Make your justice the simple way. Someone behind him murmured, Sir, but he silenced them with a glance. Go ahead, Mason. Finish it. It'll justify every headline they write about you tomorrow. I stepped forward until our faces were inches apart. His breath rattled like an old engine trying to die. You think ending you is justice? I said, I'm smarter than that. I want you alive, to watch your empire rot. His composure cracked. His lips trembled. You don't have the reach to strip me down. I raised my wrist, my watch flashing red again. Julian's final backup cycle. The automatic upload he'd set in motion the night he died. Real-time data transfer to international watchdogs, already bleeding through a dozen verified outlets. The agent's radios erupted with chatter. Sir, the files, they're public. Every classified payment directive, every user log. Hale's face fell. His breathing slowed. You wouldn't. I already did, I said. You taught me one rule, systems adapt. So I rewired yours. He tried to speak, but the words cracked before they formed. The power fell away from his posture. The father of shadows was finally a man facing daylight. The arresting agents closed in. One gently put cuffs on his trembling wrists. Hale didn't fight. He just stared at me as they led him toward the waiting car. I whispered after him. Ivy says hello. Hours passed. The airfield emptied, replaced by quiet hums of recovery crews. I sat alone at the far end of the runway, rain soaking through the seams of my jacket. It should have felt victorious, but it didn't. It felt hollow. Fiona Miles walked over, umbrella angled against the wind. You did it, she said. The files reached Geneva. Independent task forces are moving in. The operation's officially terminated. Terminated? I repeated softly. Nice word for a cleanup. She sat across from me on the wet steps. You still think none of this mattered? I think truth came late, I said. She should be alive to see it. Fiona nodded. Sometimes justice takes time. Sometimes it doesn't save who we love, but it saves everyone after. We watched the lights of the convoy fade onto the horizon, the one carrying Hale. After a long silence, she asked, What will you do now? I exhaled slowly. Bury my ghosts. She frowned gently. You have any left? All of them, I said. Then I stood up, shoving the rain off my hands. But they're quieter now. Her voice followed me as I walked away. You made the unthinkable happen, Mason. You proved corruption bleeds. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The fight was done. But somewhere deep inside, I knew something still waited. The missing name in the chain of orders, the one Hale hadn't said aloud. Because wars like his never end with one arrest. They hide, shift, evolve. And I'd just drawn their attention all over again. Still, that didn't matter tonight. Tonight, my daughter's voice lived again. 3 weeks later, the city had changed. Not the skyline, not the noise, but the silence behind headlines. For once, it wasn't fear holding people quiet. It was awe. Ivy's footage had become evidence in the largest corruption takedown in state history. 9 families disgraced, careers erased, the judicial web torn apart. Victor Hale was gone, transferred under federal watch to a facility that no one dared name. They called it Victory. But Victory doesn't visit fathers like me. I sat on a park bench overlooking the river, same spot Ivy loved when she was little. Trees whispered in the winter wind, and the water carried reflections of newscasts glimmering across downtown screens. Her voice used to echo here. She'd skip stones and ask questions that could split my heart in half. Dad, are soldiers scared of their own shadows? Back then, I'd laugh it off. Now, I knew the answer. Yes, some of us are born in shadows, but only the lucky ones ever walk out. A jogger passed behind me, phone blaring headlines. Court denies bail for Preston Hale Jr., citing treason charges. I stared across the water and whispered, It's over, baby girl. Except it wasn't. Because earlier this morning, I'd received a letter. No sender. Just one line written in clean, heavy ink. Your daughter's footage was only the beginning. Folded inside were photographs. Surveillance shots. Men in dark suits, standing near the Ridgeport docks. The same docks from Ivy's video, but the cargo labels had changed. The shipments hadn't stopped. They just switched hands. The war I exposed was reborn under new names. I clenched the letter until the paper softened with rain. Then I smiled, a tired one, but real. Because I understood now why Ivy did it. Truth doesn't rest. And maybe soldiers like us weren't meant to, either. Footsteps approached. Fiona Miles. She'd traded her prosecutor heels for plain boots, coat pulled tight. You got it too, she said quietly. So it continues, I replied. She nodded. Different players, same game. But this time, people are watching. You changed how they think about silence. I looked out over the water again. No, she did. Fiona placed something beside me. An old phone, screen cracked, but functional. Ivy's phone. Recovered from digital forensics, she explained. Final memo in her notes folder. I opened it, breath catching at her handwriting still etched across the screen. If truth ever costs my voice, I hope someone out there keeps talking. Those words didn't break me. They healed me. For the first time since that night, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't lost. I was exactly where I needed to be, between who I was and who I finally understood I could become. Tomorrow, I'll fly to DC to testify. After that, maybe the rooftops will be quiet again. Maybe I'll teach self-defense to kids the world keeps overlooking. Maybe I'll just disappear. But before I do, there's one last thing. For every tired soul listening right now, if you've ever lost someone to betrayal, corruption, or silence, let this story remind you. Justice is patience dressed as pain. And truth may bleed, but it never dies. Ivy proved that.